Welcome back to the podcast, all my friends, colleagues, and listeners. We've got another great guest today. Her name is Gina Riley. She's coming to us from Portland, Oregon, and she has a business called Gina Riley Consulting. I'm going to start off with a little bit of her bio, and then we're going to dig into some really, really useful takeaways. I think today is going to be filled with tips and tools that everybody who listens to this is going to be able to use at some point or another. So, Gina Riley is a human resources professional who sits at the powerful convergence between career coaching, executive search, and interview skills training. An authority in career transition, she is the creator of the Career Velocity System, a comprehensive solution that helps leaders and executives map out a transition strategy to last throughout their career. Gina brings over 25 years of experience from small businesses to Fortune 500 companies and has a master's degree in whole system design. Gina's unique approach helps leaders showcase themselves as a business solution and position themselves as authoritative problem solvers that accelerate career transition success. Gina, thanks so much for being on.
Thanks for having me on.
It's always like the fourth sentence of somebody's bio when I start to look at it very closely.
That's too long, huh?
Oh, no, I love it. And it reads well. So thank you so much for being on. I am really excited to chat. And you work in an industry space that affects 100% of people, right?
Yes. I think today all of us should have some expectation that our jobs are not stable forever and that we have to get used to the idea that we're always in some kind of a transition.
It's very interesting because for the longest time, a lot of people thought economically that younger employees, both in age and in how long they'd been there, were kind of the more disposable ones, but they cost less. They come with different types of training. I've had multiple friends and contacts in the past few months post on LinkedIn that they'd been laid off after 12 years at Microsoft. And these people in upper middle management are not the ones that you think would be chopped off, but when they lay off several thousand people at a time, you might be surprised that your name comes up. What are you seeing with all of these big corporate layoffs from these companies that are doing it by the hundreds?
Well, what happens in any layoff situation is, especially when there's whole entire groups and divisions, you're going to have there's a triangle. There's a few people at the top that are the senior leaders, all the way down to the first line employees that might be newer, and everyone's going to experience transition. Everyone is going to be impacted in some way and to some degree. And as humans, we need to learn how to manage that transitionary state in order to get through it and come out to a new beginning so that we can go and then get on the job hunt and not carry the baggage with us. Because one of the worst things you can do is carry that backpack with you into an interview situation and not have the right attitude that doesn't come across in a way that people are like, ooh, we really want you to join our team now.
At some point in the near distant past, there was a statistic that the average American changes career entirely 3 or 4 times in their lifetime. Would you say that number has multiplied? Is it just completely fluid at this point?
Well, it'll be interesting in the future to see what kind of numbers are put to that. And I think that the averages have got to be skewed when you consider, older Gen X and then boomers who've been in their careers or at least their companies for a very long time. Because I've actually interviewed people for some of the articles that I write for, and they've been at their companies 26 years. The Intel and the Nike kind of, people that have been there and grown up with the company. But now, to answer your question, I think that people should have it in their mind that, they may have a job for 3 to 4 years, that'd be solid. And then maybe they bounce somewhere else or, within 2 to 3 years, trying to position themselves upwards.
I'd be very interested to see anyone who is born from, let's say, like 95 on, if there are use cases where somebody stays at a company for more than 25, 30 years, what that company is,
That's really hard to imagine, isn't it? It's
Well,
hard to wrap my head around that.
have to wait
Yeah.
and see, but that'll be a surprise. So, Gina, for every interview we do it in a three-part act, kind of like a movie. We talk about what you currently do, we wind it back to what got you here, and then what you'd like to accomplish in the future and trends you see coming. So why don't you start by telling us who you are, what you do, and what a kind of day, week, year in the life is like. I gather it's never boring.
Yes, I'm a solopreneur. Started my business like 5 or 6 years ago. I'm also affiliated with an executive search firm called Talents Group. So what I do day to day is I have created a program called Career Velocity, which is essentially a 9-step model that helps move my target, leaders and executives, through career transition. It takes leaders and executives longer because there's less opportunities, because you look at a triangle, like we were saying before, and there's less of them. And so it can take, 6 months to a year. Sometimes if you're replacing a CEO job or a CEO, some kind of CXO job, it can take a long time. And so what I realized when I started creating a solution for people, that it wasn't the resume. Like, having an awesome resume is not the solution. It's one marketing document out of this 9-step process. So what I spend my days doing with my clients is building week on week their storytelling. We're working on their unique value proposition. I'm using an assessment called the YouMap, YOUMAP. I do a leadership assessment. I work on their career story, and I'm writing a synthesis for them so they have it for their entire career going forward. If they should get laid off, which I just had a former client, she had landed over a year ago, just got laid off from one of these big companies that we know about. And she was texting me and I said, you have everything you need from what we worked on. You have your unique value proposition. All you need to do is update that resume because the format's there. It's awesome. LinkedIn profile, go get back on LinkedIn. And what does she need to do? Networking, job search strategy, networking, interview prep, right? And then I work on a thought leadership component. So that's what I do. I use this model and I'm applying it uniquely with each client that I work with, and most people that are with me for 6 months to a year.
So the job seeker is the person who hires you.
The job seeker. So occasionally I am consulting with Talents Group, and I may conduct an executive search, which is 100% independent from my coaching business. And the reason is that's a conflict of interest. Like, if I am contracting with a company or organization who wants me to go to market and help them identify a pool of candidates for a CEO, that's an independent project that I take on. And it's awesome when I do it. It's very, very time consuming. But I'm working with boards of directors. I'm working with a leadership team, a lot of stakeholders. How does that help my coaching clients? I come back and I say, here's all the things that you don't do when you're going through an interview process that I just saw all these people blow going through So my coaching clients benefit from my expertise that I'm bringing from when I do that, which is only occasional because I don't have that much time to do it. But the other thing I do is I do interview skills training. So for Talents Group, we created a 6-hour program. We go into corporate and we teach hiring managers, leadership teams, how to craft effective questions, how to probe, how to listen. And what they're doing is assessing for skills. Again, I reverse engineer that for my coaching clients, and I teach them how to reverse engineer and get ready for their interviews. So it's a really cool, that's why it's the convergence of executive search, interview skills, and coaching, because I'm pulling it all together in service of my coaching clients.
Are there very many people that do what you do, in that I know a lot of people are familiar with what were once and possibly still are called headhunters, any name for that, moniker for that, people that are in between employer and employee, and they somehow get paid out of a package of one of the two folks. But if somebody wants to get a job, it seems increasingly difficult. And forgive me, I've been self-employed for about 10 years now. I haven't had a resume in a really long time. But if you want to get a job, you can put like the little green hoop around your name on LinkedIn and say, I'm available, which some people who currently have a job might not want to indicate. And you want to apply for things, but you want to do it discreetly, maybe even. Is that kind of the case? If you want to get a job, do you have to full on say, find me, rather than just applying to 1,000 things?
Yeah, your question is amazing, and there's a lot of nuances to it. So, for someone who is ready to make a move, and maybe they're positioning internally as well, right? But they're itchy, they're ready to go, but they don't want to signal too much to the outside world, with the green swirl around their head. There's ways you can set your settings behind the scenes more privately, but it doesn't guarantee that internal recruiters won't see it, those with a recruiter seat. So you have to just make your own decision. I'm not here to judge anybody on how they want to go about doing that. But the way that you go about making any move is you've got to start with one, do you know what your sharp tool is? Can you explain your unique value proposition? Because if you can't, you're going to have missteps and you may burn out some of your opportunities that come your way. So that's one. Two, you must network. You must network, you must have conversations, informational meetings to learn about what's happening in your industry, in your field, in your line of work. The third thing I would say is you really need to have a thought leadership plan. Whatever's authentic to you in the way that you showcase your expertise and become known, liked, and trusted, that's that branding for what you do. If you're not doing a little bit like on LinkedIn or something a little bit maybe bigger, like trying to speak at a conference or write a paper or co-author something, then it is less likely for you to be found. You've got to be known for something.
So I know you mentioned the what did you call it? The tip of the spear, your unique selling proposition.
Your sharp tool. Yeah.
Sharp tool. There it is. So if you were somebody who worked in a small company where you had not an ambiguous role, but a lot of different things. For example, I own a marketing agency and my whole team and myself too. I mean, I do photography and video and animation and events and graphic design. And if I went to work for a Microsoft, I'm not going to be doing creative arts. They outsource that to advertising agencies and contractors and people overseas. If I went to work at Microsoft, I'm probably going to be working in some kind of sales or some kind of analytics or things that I'm more than capable of. But part one question is, how do I market myself knowing that? And part two is, how do I assert myself at the level that I need to enter at, even though my resume doesn't necessarily indicate that I've worked in sales a lot recently?
Yeah. So we'll start with the sharp tool. You need to reverse engineer your messaging and think like the decision maker. So if I'm the decision maker who needs fill in the blank, if it's not the graphic design pieces of what you do, but it's that technology piece, then you have to lead with that. This is what I do really well. And you have to showcase that through storytelling and results. So that's the sharp tool on your Swiss Army knife that you're pulling out. Once you have their attention that you can satisfy what they need from you, they're going to pay you a salary to do this job. Then allow them to be pleasantly surprised that you have a corkscrew and a screwdriver and all these other things on the Swiss Army knife. But you got to lead with the sharp tool or else you're going to confuse your audience. And it's just all too easy for them to shift their attention to someone who can do what they say they need. So that's the sharp tool. Now you asked a second question though, and how do you enter the ecosystem at the level that you feel like you should be paid at, or is that what you were asking?
Yeah, even if you come in at a level that is consistent with your age, talent, experience, whatever, but it's not from a parallel company that is doing the same thing or something that is obvious to people who may be your subordinates or your colleagues. What happens in that case? And this happens all the time. If somebody works in oil and gas and then they go to work at Apple, people are going to be like, oh, this person's good at management, but they've never worked in our industry before. Is that a difficult move to go into something that you're more than capable of, but it's not exactly your wheelhouse?
Right. So I put some people in there's career switchers. So it's like one category I have in my own mind, which is I'm actually going to switch gears and do something slightly different, slightly adjacent. And that's one thing. But you're saying maybe industry switching. So it's on the onus is on the job seeker to prepare stories about their transferable skills that will apply to the new job. So the first order of business is making sure you understand what all those transferable skills are. And then you need to have informational conversations to identify perceived skill gaps. Maybe you're thinking, I can do that whole job over there at Microsoft. No problem. I've been doing all that same stuff over here. That's not your problem. Your problem is the decision makers and their perception that you will not fit in, you won't understand being in a technology company. Who knows? I don't know what those are. That's on the job seeker to go in and start asking those questions. Hey, tell me about the key skills that you need to do this job. Oh, okay, that kind of relates to some of the things I'm doing here. Now, I'm coming from this background. When you look at someone with my background, what are your concerns? What worries you about me making that kind of a switch? Now you can start to reverse engineer the messaging you're going to have to come up with to get people's attention. You're going to have to network to get to the decision makers because they won't obviously just pluck you out of the resume stack because they're going to have plenty to choose from. So you got to make yourself, the squeaky wheel. Those are a couple suggestions.
One other interesting thing, and we can walk away from big companies because I don't know that a ton of my listeners work for Fortune 500s. But one thing that I've always been curious about is if you really want to work, let's just say Microsoft again. If you really want to work at Microsoft, there are 1,000 people maybe not 1,000. There's 400 people, let's say, in that company that have the title marketing director. And one of them works with Windows products for sale in Walmart. One of them works on Xbox. One of them works on Canada Media. And they all have the same title, and they all seemingly have similar tasks, but they're in very different departments. They might be in different cities or states. What is it like? Do you just want to get into a company and then kind of figure out the lay of the land, and eventually you'll evolve laterally to where you're supposed to end up?
With really large companies like that, I think there's something to be said for getting in, breaking in, especially in an economy that's rocky. Getting in is sometimes that first order of business. However, I'm going to go back to the informational conversation idea, which is start having conversations with people and say, hey, I'm just trying to get the lay of the land and understand kind of the organizational structure. How are you organized? Is it by product line? Is it by what? And start mapping it out. Start trying to figure out, okay, who are the leaders of those different product lines or functions or fill in the blank. That's what I would do.
So this is fascinating. As you know, this podcast is called Dream Jobs. I interview people that have cool jobs. You have a unique and cool job, helping people get jobs. So thanks for humoring me for a couple of these questions because I'm extremely curious. One of the other things that I'm interested in is all of the different, not just channels, but forms that your resume gets disseminated in. So people still gather that they need to make a PDF resume, but then when you're applying on LinkedIn versus when you're applying on the actual website of a company, you have to copy paste each one of your things and rank them correctly. And are there bots reading it before it goes to a hiring manager? What are kind of the best practices for actually the applying process at this point?
What you'll find with me is I'm going to be honest about where I don't have deep expertise because I don't believe that applying is the best method. It's not my strongest area of expertise, knowing every nuance. And here's why. If you read anybody who runs the stats on your chances when you apply through, an automated system, it's, a couple percentage points that you will even make it in front of a human that's making decisions and get into an interview process. And I'm working with leaders and execs who are also trying to go closer to the needle in the haystack. So what's the best way to do it? You've got to you can apply to these jobs and you got to cross all your T's, dot your I's, just like you said. If you miss one box, can you work in the US and you haven't clicked it? That could be the one thing that you're completely thrown out, right? And it could take an hour or two to like fill out some of these applications. So are you going to spend your time, filling out applications all day? Are you going to go spend your time where you're going to get a higher rate of return, which is looking for decision makers and trying to penetrate the system and find what could be known as advocates or boosters to get you in front of the right people, so at least the resume gets seen. Then you can apply.
What is a use case of, you mentioned people can work with you 3 to 6 months. Do people most often come to you like, I just got laid off and I need to get a job right now? Or is it, I want to get a bigger job in the future at another company and I'm hiring you on the down low? What is your most common client?
It's a little bit 50-50. Part of my client base are itchy. They're ready to make some kind of move. And they have the foresight and the patience to go ahead and work with me and work through it. Some of those people take longer because they are less incentivized. They don't have that fire under their behind because they have a paycheck. So there's that, and they have a little less time. And a lot of my folks have like kids or they have stuff going on. But, I drive them for up to a year because I'm contracting with them for up to a year. Now, there's other people in that I don't have a job. Some of them have been out of work for a while, and by the time they get to me, they are frustrated. They might be angry. They might be depressed and sad a little bit. There's all these emotions. And then occasionally it'll be someone that's just laid off and they're like, okay, I'm going to get going. Most people don't think that way. And do you want to know why? These big companies spend very little money per person for outplacement packages. So what happens is it's great. It's an awesome service where you have standardized content and resume help and some other things that's helpful for the masses. The people that I work with are sharpening their tool with over 25 years of experience, and they have to figure out how they're going to communicate it. Well, not everyone in those outplacement companies is equipped to help them navigate and communicate the sharp tool. And that takes specific skill and experience. So some of those people find their way to me after, and now they're 6 months behind because they thought that was going to be the answer.
I hear a lot about people on the youngest end of what should they do out of school, what kind of training should they get, should they forego academia, are trade schools going to be the future because robots are going to take over, all the things. But one of the situations that I'm particularly interested in is the opposite side, where you have people maybe in their 60s outside of like law, medicine, academia, where people, often will continue practicing into maybe even their 70s, 80s. If you're in your 60s and you're not really the retiring type, but think about like broadcast news, those journeyman anchors on the anchor desk used to it was like death do us part. And now you've got 25-year-olds in mass markets at the anchor desk. And so if you're a talented person that is able in every way and wants to keep working, but you find yourself in your early, mid, late 60s, how do you get a job? Do you have a lot of people coming to you that are like, I don't need to be in the C-suite, I just want to get hired and not be age discriminated?
Yeah. So age discrimination is real. And technically at the age of 40, the law says you're old. So that puts me in the old category. But, jumping a little further along, I do have, I have clients that are in that over 60 category. I'm working with someone who's 69 right now who's impressed the heck out of me. Incredible successes with a top company and global leadership. And during the pandemic had taken some time off because of a layoff to build a custom home. And then now he's ready to get back to work. And he's like, how am I gonna break through? And we're working together. But now that I understand his story and I'm helping him get that sharpened, he's going to go have these networking conversations he's going to start with people that know him and start to hear about what those opportunities are. Because I believe when you already have track records of success, and then there's also an element of stability. You're 69. You're not like cruising around like, oh, I'm going to cut bait and I'm going to go 2 years from now, I'm going to go somewhere else. This is a person who's like, I want to go work. I want to go lead a team. I want to do good work and I'm serious about it. So I think the opportunities are there, but I think that people who are older, they need to be ready and confident with their storytelling, and they've really got to network just like everybody else does.
Right. And what exactly, it sounds like you work with a lot of people that are experienced and have some pedigree, and so maybe this question might be irrelevant. But if somebody is laid off and they immediately need a response to find a job, and they're like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the time to be applying, maybe I'm working something in the interim, and I want to hire somebody like you to help me. The first question for a lot of people has got to be, is this going to break me financially, right? If I'm having somebody who is helping me, are there a lot of people like you, and are there levels of resources that most
Yeah,
Americans can afford?
yeah, that's a good question. I am working with people who can afford the investment of time and money. But what I will say is I'm connected to so many beautiful, amazing career coaches and resume writers all across the world, particularly in the US though. And a lot of my peers, myself included, we spend a ton of our time writing articles, researching, interviewing people, providing like free downloadables. So for the ambitious person who needs to DIY, do it yourself, there are resources that are very inexpensive. Like, okay, here's like a small course on how to build your resume. It's $9.99. Okay, great. There's things like that. Interview prep. One of my friends has like a inexpensive salary negotiation, course. So it's out there. I would say go to reputable places where you can see real testimonials and you can back channel and see those coaches on LinkedIn. They're not hiding. They're very visible. And those are all the people that I know and I trust. We exchange information. We're watching and reading each other's content. So it's out there, but obviously I'm 100% dedicated to the people that sign up with me. And so I spend a massive amount of time with every single one.
And I'm sure everybody is just itching by now to hear how you got into this. Give us the superhero origin story.
Oh, I don't know if everyone's so itchy to hear my story. When I was 16, I was a part of personal development and leadership programs in high school, and one was called the All-Star program. So I was trained from age 16 from motivational speakers that were traveling around the country, and it was during the Just Say No to Drugs, campaign and whatnot. So they would go around and they would take student leaders on these 3-day retreats and teach people like me communication skills, relationship skills, standing up for oneself and just being your authentic, the authentic person that you need to be. And it inspired me greatly. And so it led to a path of being a camp counselor in college, where I worked for a company called the Learning Forum. And the program that I worked for was Super Camp, and it was a 10-day program. And high school students would come in, or it would be junior high in one case. They would come in and with a pair. There's a bunch of us that would be the camp counselors, and we were taking people through full day intensive training on how to communicate better, how to relate to people better, how to be a better leader, how to be a better person, taking them on ropes courses and jumping off the 30-foot pole, all those things that help people shake up a little bit and then stand up and become their better self. So in college, I took those learnings. I created my own little program called Power Workshop. I actually got our Arizona State University Greek system to fund it and send representatives. So I did that twice, where I actually brought in a motivational speaker, I co-led, and then did the same kind of thing in a 3-day, workshop. So since an early age, from age 16 to 21, this has been a huge passion of mine, which led to a career, in human resources. That was the path that seemed like the right way to get into being in this line of work. So I began as a recruiter. I got a master's degree in whole systems design, which led to me being an HR business partner, supporting a vice president at Intel. I was at Intel for 10 years and did a bunch of different jobs. And then I went into training and development. So, all of these experiences led ultimately to like where I am at today with my affiliation with Talents Group, doing the executive search, because one of my counterparts is she's owned that company now for 12 years. And then and doing the interview skills training, and then now creating this coaching program. I'm really like, I love to create things by design and make things that are efficient. So that's my origin story, and that's how I got here.
I love that. And what is your plan for the next 1, 3, 5 years? Are you planning on it always being you and working just with very executive clients? Are you planning on replicating this in evergreen products like courses, or hiring people, or kind of what's the vision?
Yeah, I have a couple things couple irons in the fire. I am a solopreneur, so it takes me longer than it should, to do some things, but it is what it is. But I plan on taking the career velocity model and writing a book so that people can buy a book and go, okay, I see the plan. I see what I need to do, and what are the moving parts? How do they go and piece that together? So that, and then pulling out modules where I can do some courses that are more affordable and give people some of those pieces that they can kind of build their plan. So that's kind of my shorter term goal, but it's probably a 1 to 2 year goal.
Love that. And one of the things that we like to ask every guest is, what is something right now that you're proud of, either as a business owner or personally? What's something that's just kind of got you jazzed?
Well, what I will say, and it's really sweet because my husband reinforces this. He's like, you created something out of nothing. Like, career velocity didn't exist, and the way that I put it together I can't see that on the market. I have a lot of peers that do pieces of it, or a couple of pieces, and they're amazing. But what I'm doing is something that's integrated. So I'm really, really proud of that. And then the other thing I would say is I'm really proud of the relationships I've developed over the last 5 to 6 years, and the partnerships that I have that help inform my work. And I'm just part of a really generous community of people who refer to each other and help each other.
That's awesome. Dig that. So in every podcast, we ask a couple of questions toward the end that are just kind of fun about you as an entrepreneur, as a person. So the first one is a 3-parter. If you could do any job in the universe for one day, have you ever dreamt of being some kind of performer or astronaut or something wild?
Oh yeah. I would say, you could just like take me into 1989, like Janet Jackson or Mariah Carey, and put me on stage. That would be it. Probably Janet, because she's a dancer and I am not. So if I could channel that would be awesome, because Mariah Carey does not dance.
Absorb those skills. Yeah, but that 6-octave songbird, there's few humans that
I know.
So
it's like 6 this, half dozen that. But I'm telling you, channeling Janet Jackson's moves, like a little, adjacent to Michael Jackson, that would not be bad.
Dig it. So the second question is, if you had to go back to college, where's Arizona State? Tucson?
No.
Phoenix.
Tempe, Arizona.
Tempe, that's it. I just went there for the first time. If you had to go back to college age you and go into a different field entirely, was there another industry that you thought you would have made a great lawyer or something else?
That's a good one. I don't regret what I studied, so I haven't spent time re-engineering that for myself. It's more forward motion. I studied communication, the study of interpersonal and intercultural and organizational communication. It's completely in line with what I'm built to do.
Okay. So the third one is the 50,000 footer. Hopefully you're not crashing into Chinese spy balloons. But you're up there. Money doesn't matter, but you have to work. If you could do anything, like own a sports franchise or be a movie producer, or you're Oprah rich, what would you do?
I probably would morph myself into like the female version of, some of the greatest motivational speakers of our time. So I would say that. So instead of name dropping specific ones and anchoring people's hearts and minds into that, just like that's kind of what I envisioned when I was 16, and I didn't quite get there, but that's probably what it would be.
Okay, so I won't make you reveal whether you're a disciple of Tony Robbins or whatever it is that you find divisive. But one thing that we do like to ask for helpful tools is, are there any books or podcasts or anything that you just love to hand out to people that you think are pretty universally useful right now?
Well, yeah, in my career transition space, that's where I live. So I recommend to all of my clients, I ask them to buy Steve Dalton's The 2 Hour Job Search second edition in paperback, because for those who are in transition, he gives exact formulas on how to create target lists, and he gives you exact language on how to start engaging with people. So that's really helpful. And I use that as a tool. I use Kate Dixon's pay up salary negotiation book. So I actually buy that for my clients. That's part of my welcome package. The third resource is a book called YouMap, YOUMAP, by Kristen Sherry. She won a Career Innovator Award for the tool in 2020. And she has created a holistic assessment where you get your top 5 strengths, values, motivated skills, and your personality all in one. I use that tool with every single client to help them figure out their unique value proposition. So those are my top 3.
I love that. And where can people follow you, engage with your content, hire you if they're a right fit?
Yeah. Gina Riley Consulting, they can go to the top. There's a green button and it says click here. You download a half-hour webinar that's totally free, comes with a workbook. Check your spam folder. You can print the workbook and start creating a career transition plan for yourself. You don't need me or anybody else to start a plan. So those that watch that generally know if I'm the right fit for them, because by the end they're like, yep. They send me a note. I hear you. I know it's not about the resume. I'm ready to go.
I don't know where the terminology came from, but if you ever watch YouTube, they're always like, smash the button below, like to subscribe. I don't know why it's a smash, but I like yours. The button's on top, the first thing you see, hit the button, follow Gina. We'll put all of the links in the show notes for the podcast, below for the YouTube, in the social media feeds. You guys will all be seeing this very soon. Gina, do you have any closing thoughts or tips for all the folks out there?
Yes, I do. So I say keep a presence on LinkedIn. Make sure that you're curating what you want to have in your feed. If you hover over stuff that's like, let's say political content, but that's not helping your job search, you're going to get more of the political content. So that's on you to go there and be present, make thoughtful comments on other people's posts, create some content that's thoughtful. And when you want to connect with people, always send a personalized connection request. I would say most people don't do that with me. And if their headline starts with, I help coaches with their sales funnel, I generally don't accept it. So, and other people, none of us like to get pitched. So you need to explain why you're connecting, and you need to diversify your network with really awesome professionals to help you with your reach.
I love that. Why don't you run back one more time, GinaRiley.com. That's Riley, Riley. And that's the best place?
Yeah, it's Gina Riley, Riley, consulting.com. Go for that green button. And then there's a ton of articles, too, on the articles page. I write for a magazine called Industry Expert Magazine. So once a month, I'm pumping out really big articles about job search strategy.
I love that. We'll put links to all of that. Thank you so much for your time, Gina. We really appreciate it, and we'll have to have you back soon.
Thank you.